Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Dev Interrupted. This is your host, Dan Lines, co-founder and COO at Linear B. And today we're joined by Jake Lumetta, founder and CEO at ButterCMS. Jake, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me. This is a blast. I'm really excited to be on.
Yeah, it's totally awesome to have you with us today. We have a really, I think, great, I would say, story or kind of background about you. And we love telling these types of stories on the pod. Usually we're doing it something like, okay, individual contributor, engineer, going into an engineering leadership type role, director or VP. But in your case, we have also a pretty cool transition from engineer to founding your own company. We're also going to touch on building B2B products versus B2C. So we got a really, really excellent show. But what I want to do is let's start from the beginning, some background about you. Could you tell us a little bit about your career progression and then leading into, I guess I'll just call it leading into Butter.
Sure. I'll keep it super high level, I guess. Career-wise, it maybe started in middle school, high school. Always just kind of was interested in computers, and building and tinkering around with my own desktop computers and hardware and stuff like that. Got into the web when that started coming around, Macromedia Flash back in the day.
Yeah.
Remember the first time I saw some websites built in Flash, I was like, oh man, that is awesome.
Holy shit.
Yeah. How does that work? Like, how is that even possible, really? And that question really, I don't know, kind of set the tone, I guess, for my career. It's like, I was so curious of like, how do you build that really cool stuff seeing online? And that curiosity went to school for computer science, undergrad, and have been really interested in just like building and startups and entrepreneurship kind of my whole life. So.
Yeah, that's great. I also did the comp sci undergrad. Where'd you go to school?
I went to Michigan State. So yeah,
Nice.
I was originally from Michigan, born in Michigan. So I went to Michigan State, computer science.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think you've been a founder at other startups, or like, what's your entrepreneurship situation?
Sure. Yeah. I've started and failed at, I'm kind of losing track how many startups at this point, honestly, but I think it's like in the 4 or 5 range. And, like I said, I've always just been really passionate about entrepreneurship and trying to make a go of my own company, and I've tried that many, many times. And so like in high school, I started, I didn't know it at the time, but it was like a content business. It's called Bonafide Reviews, which is a hilariously long, hard to spell name. The domain was available. And basically it was a way for me to get free hardware as a high school kid. So it was a content site, and I would email all the hardware companies, AMD and NVIDIA, et cetera, try and get like free video cards, mice, monitors, you name it, speakers, to review, and they would send it for free. And when I found out this was an option, trying to make a go of it. So I built out the website in PHP. That was my first time using PHP. And so, yeah, I hand coded a CMS for that company, which is kind of funny to think about. I had no idea what I was doing though at the time. Right? I'm in high school, so I didn't know what a CMS was or anything like that. So that was Bonafide Reviews. That one worked out actually okay. I made decent ad money on it.
Nice.
But I learned that a content business is really hard because you have to keep creating so much content. And I tried to recruit writers for it, and
that's a grind.
It's a grind.
You're always under pressure. Like
always, constantly. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
then I tried a few other startups after Bonafide Review. I tried a social shopping startup, which if I had to kind of describe it, it was like kind of like Pinterest, but it was designed for people doing really technical, complicated shopping, where you would go to like basically if you were trying to shop for hardware or like an HD TV or something really technical or complicated, you would have the ability to go and use like a bookmarklet and kind of go around the web. So you can go to Amazon. Do you know what bookmarklet is? They used to be like really popular. This is before like browsers had plugins and stuff, but basically it was like a browser plugin.
Yeah. Now there's like updated versions of that same concept.
Yeah, exactly. So we built that, and it was designed to allow you to, again, comparison shop for really technical stuff. That was who I was interested in, because that's coming from the Bonafide Reviews background. Anyway, so I built that out, and I learned that I learned lessons on kind of all these, and I'll maybe touch on those just real quickly. But we sort of built that company in a vacuum, didn't talk to anybody. It was myself and another engineer. And so we were just like building features for maybe 6 months or something like that. And like, oh, what if we could do this thing? And like, oh, we should probably do this. And like, we need to be able to undo that. We just built like feature after feature. And it was super fun. It was fun, like coding and like building all this crap. But then we actually started to get people to try and use it. And surprise, surprise, like no one used it. I tried to get my wife to use it. And the first thing she did was she went and added a purse. She like went to a purse site and like added a purse. So I said, no, this is not what it's for. It's like, you're supposed to be shopping for TVs or I don't know, computers or something like that. And it's kind of funny to think that, because it was like, holy shit, it was kind of like a Pinterest-esque. If I was smarter.
Consumers, they'll do whatever they want.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that was painful. We spent a lot of time building that. No one used it. So yeah, don't build in a vacuum without talking to anybody. That's an obvious lesson, but a big mistake that they made. Another one was, and then Butter's coming up here. Another one was a company called Winkfid, which is a silly name, but it was an online speed dating app or website. It wasn't an app, so it was a website. So you could we would connect you with 10 other singles, and just like in 5-minute, kind of speed dating fashion. And you'd pay, nice. I don't know how much we charged, $20.
What year did you do that? Was that like during the time all of the dating apps were happening, or before? Or
this was around 2009, 2010. There was another. Do you remember hearing about chat roulette? Yeah,
I remember.
Yeah. So chat roulette became really popular right around the same time we were doing that. People were like, "Oh, you guys like chat roulette?" We're like, "No, we're not like that." But
chat roulette got scary, but it was like an interesting concept.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. Yeah. So just coincide with that. But it was also really weird for me personally, because I was married at the time. So like, why was I building a dating startup? So, so some lessons learned from that is like, building a company is really, really hard. And so when it gets really, really hard, are you going to be passionate enough about what you're building to like continue with it? And as a married guy, I just couldn't get super passionate about dating sites, I guess.
Yeah, that's also a great lesson.
Yeah.
Choose something that is going to have longevity with your interests, because you got to be all in
for a long time. Yeah. Also, I learned that we can get this kind of hits at the B2C versus B2B point. Getting consumers to pay money is very, 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 very hard. To get someone to pay you, I think again, we were charging like $20 or something like that to do this event. It was really hard to get anyone to pay us any money. Yeah. And then, did some other ones, but yeah, then finally kind of landed on Butter as my most recent venture. I've been working on this for quite a while now.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we're gonna dive into Butter a bit. Really love that you kind of went over your journey, because there's a lot of lessons in there. I think sometimes, if you're an engineer, like I remember when I was an engineer before I founded Linear B with Ori, I kind of just thought, okay, if I'm gonna do a startup or like be an entrepreneur, it has to be like you raise like $100 million round, and like, because it's like the ones that you read about.
Yeah.
But really there's amazing lessons on, I don't know, side projects, turning into something, starts and failures. So like really encourage everyone, to try something. You'll learn and go from there. And those lessons usually lead you to like a big, like hitting on something. One Absolutely. Thing I wanted to ask you before we move into Butter is, having that engineering background, like the engineering degree, was that like a pro or a con when you started these endeavors that you just went over?
In my case, it was certainly a pro. I mean, it was kind of a prerequisite, honestly. Like I wouldn't have been able to, I don't have a bunch of money or something like that. And I was just working like a normal job. So if I couldn't have built it myself, then it would have been really tough. You have to have a lot of conviction to like start pulling money out of your own piggy bank to pay someone else to like build something for you. So unless you can go straight off the bat and convince investors to, give you some money.
And you got to have money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in my case, being able to kind of dabble and to sort of build and be creative and kind of experiment, having that background as an engineer certainly helped. But, that doesn't mean you have to be an engineer, obviously, to be a founder for sure. And in some cases, in an interesting way, like in that Shopify example where I was just so interested in building and coding. I think being an engineer, and it was two of us, I think having two engineers paired up was actually a detriment because we just wanted to just code all day and we didn't want to talk to customers. We didn't like want to have to figure out how to sell this thing. We didn't want to have to like figure out how to market it. You know, it was much easier
Let's
to
just
like
write code and have
yeah,
fun.
yeah, totally. So it can,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, so it's like, overall, it's really a pro, but, if engineers listening, just like keep in mind, stay close to the customer early
yeah,
on. Don't
oh yeah,
go like 6 months without talking to a user.
yeah.
So I have a note here about ButterCMS. You described it as scratching your own itch. Like what did you mean by that? And how did ButterCMS really get started?
You've always hear this, or it's a common thing where like, oh, why'd you build this company or whatever? And it's like, oh, I was just kind of scratching my own itch. And prior to Butter, I had never done that. I was never like scratching my own itch per se. And so I was like,
You
all
were
right,
creating dating apps when you
I
were
was
married.
creating stuff that I thought people wanted, right? Yeah. Which is super hard to do. Yeah. So in the case of Butter, again, just kind of building on my journey of like, it's really hard to get consumers to pay money. I never tried a B2B company. And then my own personal experience is where I was leading engineering at a couple venture-backed startups. And basically we were building an energy kind of marketplace. So like, sort of a marketplace platform, kind of like a Kayak or Expedia, but for energy. And we were doing that using Django and Python. So, we weren't using WordPress or a CMS or something like that. It was a proprietary kind of platform we were building out. And then the CMO came to me one day and said, hey, Jake, we need the ability to write blog posts for the site. We got to do some marketing. I was like, okay, cool. How do we do that? Well, I've heard of this WordPress thing. So let's just go ahead and try and use like WordPress and sort of get it to mesh and integrate with our custom Django site. And that was an insightfully kind of painful experience because we didn't want to just put WordPress on a subdomain. This is a little bit of a technical detail here, but for SEO reasons, it's better to have your blog on a subdirectory. So like yoursite.com/blog.
Yeah.
Versus, a subdomain where you just do blog.yoursite.com. Technically speaking, it's a lot easier to do the latter. We just put out a subdomain. But again, for SEO reasons, we wanted to be tightly integrated. So if you try and achieve that, there's a lot, again, I don't want to get too far in the technical weeds, but you have a Django site and you have the WordPress site, you're trying to get both of them to sort of serve different sets of URLs and routing and all this sort of stuff. It was just a really big kind of painful headache. So yeah, trying to get WordPress to work with a modern technology stack was really, really hard. Fast forward, that company got acquired by a larger company. And then I ran into the exact same scenario where it was literally like a deja vu scenario. So I went through that twice.
Maybe it was fate.
Yeah, it was something for sure. I was just like, wow, this is crazy. And the second time around though, I said, hey, no, let's not go the WordPress route because of all the lessons that I learned. Let's try and use, some other CMS. But again, and basically this is where Butter came from, is like, there weren't really any good options out there. That basically the only options that were out there were like free open source kind of Django CMSs, and there were maybe a handful or less that from a developer experience were really easy to kind of work with. But the marketer experience was lacking. And so, we used one of these free open source CMSs. I handed it over to the marketers and the marketers hated it. They're like, I can't do anything. I can't upload images. I can't resize. Like we can't schedule things to go live, blah, blah, blah. So I won that battle, but I lost the war basically. And so I took a step back from this and I'm like, okay, how should a CMS work? Again, this is kind of scratching the itch piece here. Just like, WordPress is great. It was built 20 years ago. So how should a modern content management system work? And that's where really kind of the origin of Butter came from. And so I founded Butter with like three kind of core pillars of like things I wanted as a CMS. Again, speaking as an engineer. So the pain was really kind of on the developer side. It wasn't so much on the marketer side because the WordPress UI, like fine enough to like write blog posts and whatever. Mm-hmm. But on the engineering side, what I wanted a CMS that could work with any technology stack that I was using, whether it's Django or Ruby on Rails or React, etc. I wanted a CMS that I didn't have to host and run myself. So that's why we're SaaS based, because with WordPress or a traditional CMS, it becomes like this entire stack of software that you need to run. It comes with its own templates, its own front end, CSS, HTML. It's got its own business logic. It's got its own database, etc. So it's just really heavy. It's this massive stack that you have to run in conjunction with like your core business, which is really your main focus.
Yeah.
So no one really wants to do that. Like you want to CMS, but you don't really want to have like two parallel systems running and have to maintain and back up both of them. So that's why we went the CMS, or that's why we went the SaaS approach. And yeah, so these are some of the kind of like the core pillars that I founded Butter on.
Yeah, that's awesome. What I really like about it, again, coming from like the engineering standpoint, is you experienced a problem as an engineer,
Mhm.
like high pain, high difficulty. And then you said, all right, I like had this twice in a row at least. Let me go solve it for other engineers. That's usually the formula that I see that works really well coming from
Mm.
a technical background and then moving, into a product solution. And now you're the head of your own company. So that's amazing. Is there any like we did touch on it a bit, but is there any piece of advice or like something that you learned through that motion that you want to share with the audience?
I guess with Butter, kind of going back to my journey as an entrepreneur, one of the lessons learned is like you need to talk to customers as soon as possible. And so with Butter, that's where I started actually. Yeah, I really tried really, really hard to like not write a line of code until I had spoken to several people, bought them coffee. I said, how, is this a pain for you? Like, how do you you're running a Ruby on Rails site? Like, how do you do blogging? Is this even a pain for you? So I try to talk to a lot of people and sort of validate in an honest, to myself as as I could, like, is this really actually a pain? Is it worth like spending time on?
Mm.
It is so, so hard to kind of do that because it's so fun and tempting just like to build some shit. But the thing is like, having been on this journey, and I feel so fortunate, if you find something that works and you want to like actually make a go of it, you're going to be committing, I don't know, especially if you're bootstrapping, 5 to 10 years of your life to it. You know what I mean? You want to be just like, you really want to kind of vet this thing out as early as possible. And so, yeah, that would be my one kind of piece of advice as far as like approaching, if you want to turn it into like a real, like a real endeavor, like a real business and such, try and have some customers lined up out of the gate and build for them as early as
Yeah.
possible.
That's great advice. I mean, it lines up with everything that I've learned as well. So, perfect advice there. And now we know like Butter CMS is successful, but what was it like? Take me to the beginning ish stage when you're kind of like transforming from like engineer, I have this cool idea, I'm like coding stuff, to CEO, founder. What was that like for you?
It's a good question because in my case, because I bootstrapped Butter, there was not really a clear delineation point of like, oh,
Okay.
today, yesterday I was an engineer, but today I'm the CEO or like I'm the founder, that never happened. I suppose that,
Congratulations, you're now the CEO.
yeah, exactly. So, if you go the bootstrapping approach, I think you'll find, that to be the case. I suppose if you raise money though, there's maybe that's a clear event that can delineate. But even to raise money, I mean, typically you have to have some customers or some revenue to have like proven it out. But yeah, in my case, when I bootstrapped, there really were like many transitions from engineer to CEO. The first one is obviously getting a customer, like,
Yeah.
like it's night and day when you go from kind of tinkering on a side project or whatever to like having someone actually pay you money. It changes the game, right? Now you
Monumental
have,
moment. I mean,
yeah,
that's like a moment in history.
it is.
How did
Absolutely.
you get your first customer?
Scrapping and clawing, just scrapping and clawing through my personal network, talking to as many people as I could. And I just got lucky, I knew someone who knew someone who maybe knew someone who, had a pretty kind of simple site. They weren't like a large enterprise. There was a small startup and they needed to add a blog to like a Rails site. And this sounded perfect for them. And that's what I was marketing Butter as at the time. So I engaged with them. And there was all sorts of bugs. They were like trying to get it to work, and there were all sorts of bugs. I remember hopping on a call and like just doing anything and everything I could to like get this guy to be happy. And then I was like, would you be okay paying like $19 a month for this? And they were like, yeah, of course. But for me, I was like super nervous to ask that. I didn't know if I was like maybe 19 is too much. Maybe I should be like 9 a month or something. Like I don't know. Like what's the right number here? And so yeah. So anyways, I got them to sign up for $19 a month. And it was huge.
With that first customer, kind of what I learned is really the price doesn't matter, you know, or even the first 10 or whatever. It's more like going from a free mode. I'm getting something to free to I'll pay almost anything. Yeah, I mean, you probably want to do
Totally.
it like over $1 or whatever. But like, it doesn't really matter if it's like 19 or 24
Yeah.
or you'll
Yeah. No,
figure
totally.
all of that out later. But the huge thing is like someone said, yeah, like I'll put up some money for it.
Right.
Put in my credit card or send me an invoice or whatever that is. I remember when that happened at Linear B, it's like a moment that you say, okay, we're starting to see a little bit of fit here.
Yeah. It's important too, though, you get like, real customers. And so real customer means not your best friends, not your uncle or something like that. I mean, that's cool. That's good. I'm not trying to like put that down, but I mean, if you're being truly honest, like, can you go get people who you have no idea who you are, have like no allegiance to you to like pay you some money? Can you get that first one? And then can you go get the next five, and then can you go get the next 10?
Yeah.
If you do that, then that's amazing. And you're onto something.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I would totally also say there's a difference but from like friendlies, super friendlies to like organic. I have like zero relationship with this person or company.
Yeah.
That's also like a amazing moment,
Yeah. It's super
really
exciting.
validating. What's the structure of Butter CMS, like employees and like what? Can you tell us a little bit of where you are now?
I mean, basically, yeah. And again, it's as a bootstrap journey, it looks very different than a kind of venture back journey. With bootstrapping, it was just being super scrappy. So, day one, it was me building everything, doing the outbound sales, answering the support tickets, like all the stuff. And then over time, you start getting some revenue. And in my case, that went all back to kind of, freelancers, consultants in the most frugal, scrappy way that I could to try and help kind of build things out. And yeah, I don't know. Then kind of fast forward, now we're really in kind of company building mode where we just hired a director of marketing. We actually just hired a director of sales as well. So these are like really just kind of pivotal
That's
hires
great.
for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have an engineering team, we've got a marketing team, customer success team as well. We hired out last year. So yeah, it's, so now it's just completely different. Like now it's all about team focus, so I don't spend time coding anymore. It's just really just trying to get the best talent and build an amazing team.
Yeah. So I mean that's really like my next question for you. That now that transition from I'm hands on with the product, I'm developing. Now you're saying it's more into like team mode, and how does that feel for you from an engineering standpoint? Like not doing that anymore.
You mean like not doing like coding or anything anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely, as a creative engineer, I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss that. It's just like that is certainly an enjoyable part of the journey. And I definitely enjoyed that part of it. But like there's that kind of aspect of when you're creative and you're coding and you have an idea for something, you get into that like flow and you're just building something. And then you kind of, at the end of the day, you step back, you're like, this is awesome. Like, look at this thing that I built. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's super enjoyable. I would say, now at this point for me personally, now it's just a whole different set of challenges to solve and which are awesome. Like things that I never thought that I would have to worry about or think about or, figure out solving. And some of the things that, don't happen when you're just kind of working on a side project. So these are new challenges and just an opportunity for me to grow, to continue to grow professionally. So yeah, if you welcome that, if you're excited by that, then it's an amazing journey.
The last topic that I'd like to hit on, you have a bunch of different, experiences, but we want to talk a little bit about B2B versus B2C. You've worked on both of those style products. Could you like, I guess let's start with an overview of like, what's been your takeaway, like mindset differences just to start?
Well, B2C is super kind of fun and sexy to try and go after because like who doesn't want to build an app that, the mom and the dad and like everyone and all your friends use, right? Like everyone wants to
Like
have
a
that.
billion
So,
people.
yeah, like a billion people using it, right? And then if you get that, you're like a billionaire or whatever. So like who doesn't want to go after that? Getting, as I mentioned before though, just in my experience, I mean, getting a personal individual to open their wallet and pay and make a personal buying decision is very hard. You're talking about like personal budgets. And, when you do get them
Like
to pay.
like we were talking about before we started the pod, I have a 2-year-old at home and
Yeah,
I got kids to feed.
that's right.
So
Diapers, you got an Amazon,
they
diaper
cost money.
subscription, whatever. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
totally. So why am I going to pay, whatever, 10, $19 a month to some app? So getting someone just to pay anything is hard. When you do get them to pay, the amount they pay you will be very small, right? I mean, $9, $10, $20 a month is kind of a lot for the average person.
Yeah.
So if you want to build a company that makes, let's just say like $1 million a year, and you charge $10 a month, you need 8,300 people to make that choice, right? And it's hard just to get one. So you need to get 8,300 people to pay you $10 a month to get to $1 million a year run rate company. So, and consumers have really high expectations too, because they're we're all spoiled by the high quality apps that these mega tech companies put out,
Yeah. I mean, I'm paying Spotify, $10 a month.
Right.
I'm getting any song that's ever been
That's a
created at my
great point.
fingertips.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
my expectation. What are you going to give me for $10 a month?
Yeah.
Or what?
Yeah, exactly.
It's harsh.
It's super hard to compete with that. And so, I don't know. That's been my experience with B2C. And bootstrapping a B2C company feels darn near impossible. So if you're really seriously going to go after a B2C company, again, this is just my opinion, but you pretty much, you have to be really focused on raising money and a lot of it. If you want to make a serious go of it.
Well, I guess the other way, and I can't even speak to the monetization of it besides ads, but the famous bootstrapped B2C companies have been it's free for the end, the customer, like a Facebook or something like that. And you try to get a gajillion people on there.
Yeah.
And then I guess make money by tracking them and selling it to them. Or just I'm not saying go and do that, but maybe that's another option. That's something that's free, but I know it's very difficult to monetize. And then on the other side of it, what's been your experience with B2B or the differences in your preference for what to build?
Kind of everything. This is my first go at a B2B company, but with B2B, all the challenges I mentioned before they kind of go away. So getting a company to pay money for a service that can help them, save time or make money themselves is, I shouldn't say very easy, but it's a common thing. That's what businesses do. They're always looking for tools, services, things to improve their processes, save money, save time, etc. So it's not you don't twist anybody's arm to get you to pay money. When a company pays you money, it's relatively easy to convince them to pay you, a healthy chunk of money too. So it's just a lot easier. And then, the third thing too is the person who's putting the credit card into your system. The beauty is that it's not actually their personal credit card, right? It's just a much easier decision. It's do they have budget for it? It's not this super emotional, can I pay for my diapers thing? If I start buying your service. So
yeah, it's I have a company, I have a budget plan, I have my spend. It's not my personal thing. I'm making a decision. It is still important for the company, but it's not I don't know, we're going to go out of business. At home, I can't put food on the table or something like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. So just the economics and the dynamics there for B2B, it feels, there's a lot of B2B again, bootstrap companies, which was the path that I took. So yeah, I just highly recommend that path if you have an opportunity to do it.
Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you'd like to tell our engineering audience when it comes to entrepreneurship?
Yeah. To summarize, the worst mistake is to build something that no one cares about. That applies both when you're deciding to even start a project, but it continues through when you're actually running the company. Even today, if I prioritize something for our engineering team that's a feature that takes us 3 months to build that no one ends up using or cares about, that sucks. That's rough. So you really want to hone your ability to really snuff that out. Do not build something that no one cares about. Every failure is an opportunity to learn. So don't be scared to start. I've had a ton of failures and every single one is just it's kind of touching the hot stove. You really deeply learn from the pain of kind of going through that failure. It's a painful thing to do. You put all your time and energy and emotion into something and it just not working out and sort of admitting that it's not easy, for sure. But there's guaranteed to be something that you learned about it. So every failure is an opportunity to learn. I recommend definitely do B2B. If you want to make a kind of a go at a business. On the engineer to CEO front, I don't think I mentioned this, but stopping coding, that's a huge milestone. So if you're an engineer and you kind of build the first version of your product, getting to a point where you are no longer the only person coding, or if you get to a point where you don't do any coding, is really hard to do, but it's super important. It was a super hard thing for me to do. Like I didn't want to let go of it. It's my baby. I felt very uncomfortable letting go of the control of knowing every line of code in the system and how it all worked and all that kind of stuff. But it's a huge thing. Like, again, if you really want to make kind of a go to business, there's almost guaranteed, like you can find someone who's as good at, if not better than you as an engineer. So hire them and then go spend your time on sales and marketing and like building the company.
Very important thing to mention, right? It frees you up to actually focus on the business aspects, even though it's like a hard transition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah, that's wonderful. I think like for me, I'll just close on like doubling down of what you're saying in two aspects. One, all of these like starts and failures, or actually think of it as like a long journey to success. They're like individual different projects, but actually you'll learn and you could make a case that they're really all tied together. And then the other thing that I would say, like, if you are like more shy from like a customer standpoint, start with something that's in the engineering realm where you're the customer. You're your own customer. You would use it for yourself.
That's a great point. And that's made, again, working on Butter. Yeah. Building a product for engineers is awesome because one, you can build for yourself, like you said. And two, you don't really have to guess at what they might want. Like, again, me as a married guy building a dating app, like you're completely guessing at sort of what people, what you think they'll want. And then also three, if you're an engineer, building a tool that other engineers use is super rewarding. It's like, it's super fun.
Serving your people.
Yeah, serving your people. Exactly. So it's like helping.
And you'll have like the intuition of what to do with the next feature. It just makes it like a lot easier, Mike.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, this convo went fast. Unfortunately, we are coming up on time.
Holy cow. Wow. Okay.
Time flies when you're having like a great discussion. So Jake, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It's been
Thank you, Dan.
Awesome conversation.
Yeah, this was a blast.
Before we go, like we were talking about before the pod started, I know that you have some roles that you are hiring for. What are those open roles, and like maybe where could I go find them if I'm interested?
Yeah, thanks. So you can go check them out at careers.buttercms.com. I'll mention, off the bat, we're hiring for a director of engineering. So if you love scaling challenges, again, Butter's a headless CMS. So, and we're SaaS based. So that means we handle kind of all the scaling infrastructure and all that kind of fun stuff for our customers so that they don't have to do that themselves. So we run into a lot of really interesting kind of engineering, caching, scaling challenges. So if that sounds cool to you, then we'd love to have you on the team. So come check it out. Yeah. Also, the last thing I'll mention, as putting my founder hat on here, pure sales mode, please don't build and maintain your own CMS. So I have to put that out there. Just speaking from my personal experience. If you have a legacy CMS, that's what Butter exists for. So please come check it out.
Absolutely. So everyone check out ButterCMS. And also, if you're looking for your next opportunity, it seems like a really good place to be an engineer. Thanks for listening, everyone. And we'll see you all next week.